The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Buckingham Palace as Sergeant James Mitchell adjusted his red tunic one final time. 23 years of service had taught him that every detail mattered, from the shine on his boots to the perfect angle of his bearskin hat. The household cavalry was preparing for another day of ceremonial duties, but James sensed this Tuesday would be different. His horse, Wellington, a magnificent black gelding with intelligent eyes, seemed to share his rider's intuition. The horse's ears pricked forward as he watched a small group approaching the palace gates. Among the visitors was 8-year-old Emma Thompson, who sat in a bright blue wheelchair decorated with rainbow stickers. Her parents walked beside her, clearly nervous about their first royal visit. Emma had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy at birth, but her condition never dimmed her radiant smile or her love for horses. She had dreamed of visiting the palace ever since her grandmother told her stories about the Queen's horses. Her parents had saved for months to make this dream come true, hoping the trip would lift Emma's spirits after a difficult year of surgeries and therapy. The palace tour guide, Mrs. Sarah Wellington, noticed Emma's excitement as they passed the stable area. The little girl's eyes grew wide when she spotted the magnificent horses being groomed by the guards. She pointed eagerly, making soft clicking sounds that her parents recognized as her way of calling to animals. Sergeant Mitchell was leading Wellington back from their morning exercise when he heard the gentle sounds. He looked over to see Emma's face pressed against the fence, her small hands gripping the metal bars. Something in her expression reminded him of his own daughter at that age, full of wonder and pure joy. Wellington, usually focused and disciplined during duty hours, did something unexpected. The horse walked directly to the fence where Emma sat and lowered his great head toward her. The little girl gasped with delight, reaching out tentatively to touch the horse's soft muzzle. Mrs. Wellington, the tour guide, started to guide the family away, explaining that interaction with the ceremonial horses wasn't typically allowed, but Sergeant Mitchell raised his hand gently, signaling for her to wait. "It's quite all right," he said, his voice warm despite his formal appearance. "Wellington seems to have taken a fancy to our young visitor." Emma's mother, Claire Thompson, watched nervously as her daughter stretched forward in her wheelchair. She had learned to be cautious about new situations, always worried about Emma getting hurt or disappointed. But something about the guard's kind eyes and the horse's gentle demeanor put her at ease. Wellington stood perfectly still as Emma's small fingers traced patterns on his nose. The horse's breathing was calm and measured, as if he understood the precious nature of this moment. Other tourists began to gather, cameras ready, but Sergeant Mitchell positioned himself to give the family privacy. "He's beautiful," Emma whispered, her voice filled with awe. These were among the few clear words she could speak, and they came out with perfect clarity. "His name is Wellington," Sergeant Mitchell explained, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "He's been my partner for 5 years now. Would you like to know a secret about him?" Emma nodded eagerly, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Wellington has a special talent," the sergeant continued. "He can sense when someone has a kind heart. That's why he came over to meet you." Claire Thompson felt tears welling in her eyes as she watched her daughter's face light up with pure happiness. It had been months since Emma had smiled this broadly, and the transformation was remarkable. Dr. Michael Thompson, Emma's father, quietly filmed the interaction on his phone, knowing his wife would want to watch this moment again and again. As a physician, he understood the therapeutic value of animal interaction, but this felt like something more magical. Wellington seemed content to stand by the fence for as long as Emma wanted to pet him. The horse occasionally nickered softly, as if carrying on a conversation that only he and Emma could understand. Other guards began to notice the interaction, pausing in their duties to observe the heartwarming scene. Corporal David Hayes, a younger guard who had recently joined the household cavalry, approached with his own horse, Majesty. He had been watching from across the courtyard and felt drawn to contribute to this special moment. "Majesty would like to meet you too, if that's all right," Corporal Hayes said to Emma. Emma looked between the two magnificent horses, hardly believing her good fortune. She had never been this close to one horse, let alone 2 royal horses with their magnificent riders. As Majesty approached, Wellington shifted slightly to make room, but never moved away from Emma's reach. The 2 horses seemed to understand they were part of something important. their usual military precision softened by an instinctive gentleness. Mrs. Wellington, the tour guide, had been working at the palace for 15 years and had never witnessed such a spontaneous break in protocol. But she could see the profound effect this interaction was having on the young girl and her family. Other members of Emma's tour group watched in respectful silence, many wiping away tears as they witnessed the pure connection between the child and the horses. An elderly gentleman remarked quietly to his wife that this was more beautiful than any ceremony he had ever seen. The palace photographer, who had been documenting routine activities, noticed the gathering and approached discreetly. Recognizing the significance of the moment, he began capturing images that would later become treasured memories for the Thompson family. Emma's grandmother, who had inspired this visit with her stories, would have been overwhelmed to see her granddaughter living her dream in such an unexpected way. The reality was far more magical than any story she had ever told. As the morning progressed, word of the interaction spread quietly among the palace staff. Kitchen workers paused to look out windows, gardeners found reasons to work near the courtyard, and even some of the palace's administrative staff came to witness the remarkable scene unfolding in their midst. The afternoon brought a gentle breeze that rustled through the palace gardens as Emma continued her magical encounter with Wellington and Majesty. Word had quietly spread through the household cavalry barracks, and more guards began finding reasons to pass by the courtyard where the extraordinary scene was unfolding. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Pemberton, the commanding officer of the day's ceremonial duties, had initially been informed of the protocol deviation with some concern. However, when he witnessed the interaction firsthand, his military bearings softened considerably. He approached Sergeant Mitchell with measured steps, but his expression held warmth rather than reproach. "Sergeant, I believe we may need to adjust our afternoon schedule," he said quietly, his eyes on Emma's joyful face. "It seems our horses have found a more important duty today." Emma had been stroking Wellington's neck for nearly an hour, and the horse showed no signs of impatience. In fact, Wellington seemed to lean slightly into her touch, as if drawing comfort from the connection himself. Majesty remained equally patient, occasionally nuzzling Emma's wheelchair with gentle curiosity. Claire Thompson watched her daughter with a mixture of wonder and protectiveness. Emma had always been drawn to animals, but their family's urban lifestyle had provided limited opportunities for interaction with large animals like horses. She had worried that Emma might be frightened by the horse's size, but instead her daughter seemed completely at peace. "Mummy, they like me," Emma said, her words slightly slurred but filled with absolute certainty. "Yes, sweetheart, they do," Claire replied, her voice thick with emotion. "They can tell what a special little girl you are." Dr. Thompson had stopped recording and was simply absorbing the moment. As a pediatric neurologist, he had seen countless children with cerebral palsy, but he had rarely witnessed such a profound connection between a patient and an animal. Emma's muscle tension, usually elevated due to her condition, seemed remarkably relaxed as she interacted with the horses. Sergeant Mitchell noticed Emma beginning to tire and suggested she might like to sit more comfortably. Without hesitation, he carefully lifted her from her wheelchair, supporting her securely as he held her closer to Wellington's head. Emma giggled with delight as she found herself at the perfect height to look directly into Wellington's deep brown eyes. "He has kind eyes, just like you said," Emma whispered to the sergeant. The palace photographer continued documenting the interaction, but he was no longer just doing his job. These images captured something rare and precious, a reminder of the humanity that existed within formal institutions. He made a mental note to ensure the family received copies of every photograph. Mrs. Wellington, the tour guide, had discreetly contacted her supervisor to explain the delay in the scheduled tour. Rather than expressing concern, her supervisor encouraged her to allow the interaction to continue for as long as it remained comfortable for all involved. The palace, after all, existed to serve the people, and sometimes that service took unexpected forms. Other children in the tour group had initially felt jealous of Emma's special attention, but their attitudes shifted as they witnessed the pure joy on her face. A 10-year-old boy named Marcus, who had been complaining about the boring palace tour, found himself mesmerized by the gentle interaction between the horses and the girl in the wheelchair. "Why are they being so nice to her?" Marcus asked his mother. "Because horses can sense when someone needs extra kindness," his mother replied. improvising an explanation that felt true even if she couldn't scientifically verify it. Corporal Hayes had been holding Majesty's reins, but the horse needed no guidance. Majesty seemed to understand his role in this impromptu therapy session, standing rock still whenever Emma reached toward him and responding to her touch with soft wickers of acknowledgement. A small crowd of palace staff had gathered at a respectful distance, many of them parents themselves who recognized the profound significance of what they were witnessing. The head gardener, Mrs. Agnes Murphy, wiped tears from her eyes as she watched. Her own grandson had autism, and she understood the challenges families like the Thompsons faced daily. Emma's endurance was remarkable. Despite her physical limitations, she seemed energized by the interaction rather than depleted. Her parents exchanged meaningful glances, both recognizing that this experience was providing their daughter with something that months of traditional therapy had not achieved. Wellington began showing Emma a behavior that Sergeant Mitchell had rarely seen from his disciplined partner. The horse gently rested his head against Emma's shoulder, creating a moment of such tenderness that several onlookers gasped softly. "I think he's giving you a hug," Sergeant Mitchell told Emma. "I love him," Emma declared, wrapping her small arms around as much of Wellington's head as she could manage. The horses seemed to understand that they were participating in something healing. Their usual alertness to their surroundings remained, but it was tempered with an unusual gentleness that spoke to their intelligence and empathy. Dr. Thompson found himself reflecting on his medical training and how little it had prepared him to understand the therapeutic power of such simple human-animal connections. Emma's muscle spasticity had noticeably decreased during the interaction, and her communication had become clearer and more frequent. As the afternoon progressed, Lieutenant Colonel Pemberton made an unprecedented decision. He quietly arranged for the ceremonial changing of the guard to be postponed by 30 minutes, ensuring that Emma's special time with the horses would not be interrupted by formal duties. The palace's head of security had initially been notified of the unusual gathering but quickly determined that the situation posed no threat. Instead, he found himself coordinating discreetly with his staff to ensure the family's privacy while allowing the meaningful interaction to continue. Emma's tour group had long since moved on to other areas of the palace, but Mrs. Wellington remained with the Thompson family, recognizing that she was witnessing something that transcended her usual responsibilities as a guide. She began sharing stories about the horses and their daily routines, adding context that deepened Emma's understanding of her new friends. The late afternoon sun created a golden atmosphere in the palace courtyard, as more members of the household cavalry quietly joined the extraordinary scene. Captain Elizabeth Morrison, newly assigned to the palace after serving in Afghanistan, had heard whispers about the special visitor from her fellow officers. Initially skeptical about any deviation from protocol, her perspective changed completely when she saw Emma's radiant smile. Captain Morrison had her own reasons for understanding the healing power of gentle creatures. During her deployment overseas, she had worked with military dogs and witnessed firsthand how animals could provide comfort in the most challenging circumstances. She approached with her horse, Sterling, a graceful mare known for her intuitive nature. "Sterling has been hoping to meet you too," Captain Morrison said softly to Emma. "She's very good at making new friends." Emma's eyes widened with amazement as she realized a third magnificent horse was being introduced to her. Her parents watched in wonder as their daughter, who often struggled with social interactions due to her condition, effortlessly connected with each animal. Sterling approached with the same gentle demeanor exhibited by Wellington and Majesty. The three horses seemed to communicate through subtle body language, positioning themselves so Emma could reach each of them comfortably. It was as if they had choreographed their movements to create the perfect environment for their special visitor. Mrs. Agnes Murphy, the head gardener, had been watching from her flower beds nearby. Unable to contain her emotion any longer, she approached the Thompson family with a small bouquet of roses she had just cut. "These are from the Queen's own garden," she told. "Emma, I thought you might like to give them to your new friends." Emma accepted the flowers with reverence, understanding instinctively that she was receiving something precious. She held one rose up to Wellington's nose, giggling when the horse sniffed it delicately. The palace photographer had been joined by his colleague, who had brought additional equipment to ensure they captured every angle of this remarkable interaction. They worked with professional discretion, understanding that their role was to document rather than intrude upon the magic unfolding before them. Sergeant Mitchell found himself reflecting on his years of military service as he watched Emma. He had protected royalty, participated in state ceremonies, and maintained the highest standards of military bearing. But holding this little girl safely while she connected with Wellington felt like the most important duty he had ever performed. "Tell me about Wellington," Emma requested, her speech becoming clearer with excitement. "Well," Sergeant Mitchell began, settling into his role as storyteller. "Wellington is 7 years old and he was born in Ireland. He loves apples and carrots and he's very proud of his job here at the palace." Emma listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated her genuine interest in learning about her new friends. Her parents marveled at her focus and engagement, qualities that were sometimes difficult to achieve in traditional educational settings. Dr. Thompson had been quietly observing Emma's physical responses throughout the afternoon. Her muscle tension remained remarkably relaxed and her coordination seemed improved. He made mental notes to discuss this experience with Emma's physical therapist, wondering if equine therapy might benefit his daughter. The stable master, George Hartwell, had initially been concerned about the disruption to the horse's routine, but he quickly recognized the positive effect the interaction was having on the animals as well as the child. The horses seemed calmer and more content than he had seen them in weeks. "These horses have been in ceremonies with presidents and prime ministers," Mr. Hartwell told Emma's parents, "but I've never seen them respond to anyone quite like this." Claire Thompson felt overwhelmed by the kindness being shown to her family. She had grown accustomed to stares and awkward interactions when they were in public with Emma, but today she was witnessing something entirely different. The palace staff and guards were treating Emma not as someone to be pitied, but as someone special to be celebrated. Young Marcus from the tour group had convinced his mother to bring him back to see how Emma was doing. He approached shyly, asking if he could pet the horses too. Without hesitation, Corporal Hayes guided Majesty closer to the boy, creating space for both children to interact with the animals simultaneously. "The horses like children," Corporal Hayes explained to Marcus. "They can tell when someone has a good heart." The interaction between Marcus and Emma was beautiful to witness. Marcus, who had initially felt jealous, now seemed protective of Emma, helping her reach different parts of the horses and describing colors and textures when she had difficulty seeing certain details. Lieutenant Colonel Pemberton had been monitoring the situation throughout the afternoon, and he made another unprecedented decision. He arranged for a small ceremony to be held in Emma's honor, complete with a brief military salute from the guards present. "Lady Emma," he announced formally, "by order of the Household Cavalry, you are hereby declared an honorary friend to all the horses of the Royal Guard." Emma beamed with pride as the guards executed a perfect salute in her honor. The formality of the moment was balanced by the genuine warmth in their faces, creating a memory that would last a lifetime. The palace's senior curator, Dr. Margaret Sheffield, had been following the afternoon's events through reports from various staff members. Recognizing the historical significance of the interaction, she arranged for a special commemorative certificate to be prepared, officially acknowledging Emma's visit and her connection with the royal horses. As the afternoon wore on, Emma's energy began to flag, but her spirits remained high. She had experienced more joy and connection in a few hours than she typically encountered in weeks of regular activities. Her parents recognized the signs of fatigue and knew they would need to conclude the visit soon, but they were reluctant to end such a perfect day. Wellington seemed to sense Emma's tiredness and responded by lowering his head even closer to her, as if offering additional comfort. The horse's intuitive response to her needs demonstrated an emotional intelligence that left everyone present feeling moved and impressed. The kitchen staff had quietly prepared a special tea service, complete with horse-shaped biscuits and Emma's favorite juice. They set up a small table in the courtyard where Emma could rest while still remaining close to her equine friends. As evening approached, the golden light in the palace courtyard created an almost magical atmosphere around Emma and her equine friends. The kitchen staff's thoughtful tea service had provided her with much-needed refreshment, and she sat at the small table they had arranged. Still within touching distance of Wellington Majesty, and sterling Emma had been at the palace for over 4 hours, far longer than anyone had anticipated, but no one seemed eager to end the extraordinary encounter. The horses had remained patient and attentive throughout, occasionally shifting their weight but never moving away from their young visitor. Mrs. Sarah Wellington, the tour guide, had received multiple calls from her supervisor throughout the afternoon. Rather than expressing concern about the deviation from schedule, each call had brought messages of support and encouragement to continue facilitating this special experience for as long as Emma and her family wished. The palace's head of public relations, James Blackwood, had been monitoring social media throughout the day. Despite the presence of photographers and other visitors, no unauthorized images had been shared online. The respect shown by everyone present created a protective bubble around Emma and her family, allowing them to enjoy their experience without unwanted attention. Captain Morrison found herself reflecting on her military training and how it had prepared her for many situations, but nothing quite like this. Watching Emma's pure joy and the horses' gentle responses had reminded her why she had chosen a career in service to others. Sometimes the most important missions were the unexpected ones. Dr. Thompson had been quietly documenting Emma's responses throughout the day, not as a physician studying a patient, but as a father witnessing his daughter's happiness. Emma's muscle tone remained remarkably relaxed, her communication had been clearer than usual, and her overall demeanor showed a confidence that he rarely saw at home. "Daddy, can we come back tomorrow?" Emma asked, her words carefully articulated in the way she managed when something was truly important to her. "We'll see what we can arrange." "Sweetheart," Dr. Thompson replied, though he knew their travel schedule made an immediate return visit impossible. Sergeant Mitchell overheard the exchange and felt compelled to contribute. "Emma, even if you can't visit tomorrow, Wellington will remember you. Horses have excellent memories, especially for people who are kind to them." The stable master, George Hartwell, approached with an idea that had been forming in his mind throughout the afternoon. He had spent 30 years working with horses and had developed an instinct for recognizing special connections. What he had witnessed today was extraordinary, even by his experienced standards. "Mrs. Thompson," he addressed Emma's mother, "I wonder if you might be interested in some information about therapeutic riding programs. There are several excellent facilities that work specifically with children who have special needs." Claire Thompson's face lit up with interest. The idea of Emma having regular contact with horses had never occurred to her, but after witnessing the positive effects today, she was eager to learn more. Young Marcus had returned again with his mother, and he had brought his younger sister Lucy this time. The siblings watched in fascination as Emma continued her gentle interactions with the three horses. Lucy, who was only 5 years old, asked her mother in a whisper why the horses were being so nice to Emma. "Because Emma needs extra kindness," her mother explained, "and horses are very smart. They can tell when someone could use a friend." The children's innocent questions and observations added another layer of sweetness to the afternoon. Their natural acceptance of Emma and their curiosity about the horses created an atmosphere of inclusion that warmed the hearts of all the adults present. Lieutenant Colonel Pemberton had been coordinating with palace security throughout the day to ensure that the gathering remained safe and manageable. The organic growth of the crowd around Emma had been carefully monitored, but everyone involved had shown remarkable respect and consideration. Mrs. Agnes Murphy had returned with her gardening assistant, carrying a small potted plant with a bright red bow tied around it. "This is a special rose bush," she explained to Emma. "If you plant it in your garden at home, you'll have roses that came from the same place as Wellington's home." Emma accepted the gift with reverence, understanding that she was receiving something that would help her remember this perfect day long after she returned home. Her parents appreciated the thoughtfulness of the gesture and made plans to create a special garden space where Emma could tend to her royal rose. The palace photographer had been working with his colleague to compile a comprehensive record of the day's events. They had captured not only the obvious moments of interaction between Emma and the horses, but also the subtle expressions of joy and wonder on the faces of everyone who had witnessed the encounter. Captain Morrison had been thinking about Emma's question regarding a return visit. While she couldn't make promises about official palace tours, she had an idea that might provide Emma with ongoing connection to her new friends. "Emma," she said gently, "would you like to be Wellington's pen pal? We could send you pictures and updates about how he's doing, and you could send us drawings or letters to share with him." Emma's face transformed with excitement at this suggestion. The idea of maintaining a connection with Wellington beyond this single visit was almost too wonderful to believe. Dr. Thompson found himself moved by the offer and grateful for the kindness being shown to his daughter. He exchanged contact information with Captain Morrison, already envisioning the joy Emma would experience receiving regular updates about her equine friends. The late afternoon light was beginning to fade, casting longer shadows across the courtyard. Emma was clearly tired but remained reluctant to say goodbye to Wellington, Majesty, and Sterling. The horses seemed equally reluctant to see their special visitor leave, continuing to stand close to her chair even as other activities resumed around them. Corporal Hayes had been observing Emma's interaction with Majesty throughout the day, and he had developed a genuine fondness for the brave little girl. He approached her parents with a suggestion that would create one more special memory. "Would Emma like to help me give Majesty an apple?" he asked. "It's part of his evening routine, and I think he would enjoy sharing it with his new friend." Emma's eyes sparkled with delight at the prospect of feeding one of her new friends. She accepted the apple with both hands, holding it carefully as Corporal Hayes guided her in offering it to Majesty. The apple feeding ceremony became a perfect culmination to Emma's extraordinary day at the palace. Majesty accepted the treat with gentle precision, his soft lips carefully taking the fruit from Emma's small hands without any risk of accidentally nipping her fingers. The horse's consideration and gentleness in that moment epitomized everything wonderful about the day's interactions. Emma giggled with pure delight as Majesty crunched the apple, occasionally dropping small pieces that she tried to collect and offer back to him. The guards watched with amusement as she fussed over ensuring Majesty received every bit of his treat, demonstrating the same care and attention that had characterized all her interactions with the horses. Claire Thompson found herself fighting back tears as she watched her daughter experience such uncomplicated joy. Emma's daily life was often filled with medical appointments, physical therapy sessions, and educational challenges. To see her simply being a happy child, connecting with magnificent animals in a fairy tale setting, felt like a precious gift. The palace's senior curator, Dr. Margaret Sheffield, arrived with the commemorative certificate she had arranged to have prepared. The document, written in elegant calligraphy on official palace letterhead, declared Emma Thompson an honorary friend to the royal horses and bore the official seal of the household cavalry. "This is very special, Emma," Dr. Sheffield explained as she presented the certificate. "Very few people receive recognition from the Royal Guard, and this certificate means you'll always be remembered here at the palace." Emma traced the elegant writing with her finger, unable to read all the words but understanding the significance of the formal document. Her parents were deeply moved by the gesture, recognizing that palace officials had gone far beyond normal protocols to create this meaningful keepsake. Sergeant Mitchell had been reflecting on his years of service as he watched Emma throughout the day. He had participated in ceremonies for heads of state, protected members of the royal family, and maintained the traditions of one of Britain's most prestigious military units. But somehow spending an afternoon helping a little girl connect with his horse felt like the most important work he had ever done. "Emma," he said gently, "I want you to know that Wellington has never met anyone quite like you. You've made him very happy today, and that makes me happy too." The stable master, George Hartwell, had been making quiet inquiries throughout the afternoon and returned with information about therapeutic riding programs near Emma's home in Manchester. He presented Claire Thompson with a folder containing brochures and contact information for several highly regarded facilities. "These programs are specifically designed for children like Emma," he explained. "The horses are specially trained, and the instructors understand how to work with different abilities. I think Emma would thrive in that environment." Dr. Thompson examined the materials with growing excitement. As a physician, he was familiar with various therapeutic approaches, but he had never seriously considered equine therapy for Emma. After witnessing her responses today, he was eager to explore these options. The evening light was creating beautiful shadows across the courtyard, and palace staff began preparing for the transition to evening duties. However, everyone involved in Emma's visit seemed reluctant to conclude what had become an unexpectedly meaningful day for the entire palace community. Captain Morrison approached. With a final surprise, she had coordinated with the palace gift shop. They had put together a special collection of items for Emma, including a plush toy horse that resembled Wellington, a book about the household cavalry, with pictures of all the horses, and a small photo album with some of the pictures taken throughout the day. "These are for you to take home," Captain Morrison explained, "so you can remember your new friends even when you're not here with them." Emma clutched the plush Wellington to her chest, her face radiant with gratitude and joy. The soft toy would become a constant companion, providing comfort during medical procedures and difficult days ahead. Mrs. Sarah Wellington, the tour guide, had been documenting the day's events in her official report, but she knew that her standard forms could never capture the true significance of what had occurred. She made a personal note to recommend that the palace develop protocols for similar situations, recognizing that Emma's visit had revealed opportunities for meaningful community outreach. Young Marcus and his sister Lucy had remained nearby throughout the afternoon, and they approached Emma as the visit neared its end. Marcus had been thinking about Emma's condition and wanted to say something kind before she left. "Emma, I think you're really brave," he said simply, "and the horses think so too." The innocent sincerity of the boy's comment touched everyone present. Emma smiled at Marcus and offered to share her plush Wellington, showing the same generosity of spirit that had characterized her interactions throughout the day. Lieutenant Colonel Pemberton made one final gesture that would ensure Emma's visit was remembered within palace records. He arranged for a formal entry to be made in the daily log, documenting the extraordinary encounter and the positive impact it had on both staff and visitors. The three horses, Wellington, Majesty, and Sterling, seemed to sense that their time with Emma was drawing to a close. They positioned themselves for one final group interaction, allowing Emma to pet each of them while her parents captured the moment with photographs and video. Dr. Margaret Sheffield had been coordinating with the palace's communications team to ensure that news of Emma's visit was shared appropriately. While respecting the family's privacy, they wanted to document how the palace community had come together to create a magical experience for a child with special needs. As preparation for departure began, Emma's energy seemed to revive with excitement about sharing her adventure with family and friends at home. She chattered continuously about Wellington, Majesty, and Sterling, describing their personalities and behaviors with remarkable detail for a child her age. The palace photographer presented Claire Thompson with a complete set of professional photographs from the day, ensuring that every precious moment had been preserved. The images would become treasured family keepsakes, documenting a day when everything aligned perfectly to create pure magic. Sergeant Mitchell lifted Emma one final time, allowing her to give Wellington a proper goodbye hug. The horse stood perfectly still, as if understanding the significance of this farewell moment. Emma whispered something into Wellington's ear that no one else could hear, a private message between friends. The farewell process took nearly an hour, as Emma said goodbye to each person who had contributed to her magical day. The palace staff had formed an informal receiving line, each person wanting to wish her well and express how much her visit had meant to them. The genuine emotion displayed by these professional individuals demonstrated how profoundly Emma had touched their hearts. Mrs. Agnes Murphy presented Emma with a small watering can decorated with horse stickers, along with detailed instructions for caring for her royal rosebush. "Remember to talk to your rose while you water it," she advised with a wink. "Plants grow better when they know someone cares about them." The kitchen staff had prepared a special box of horse-shaped cookies for Emma to take home, along with recipes so her family could recreate them. The head cook, Mrs. Patricia Williams, had included a handwritten note explaining that the recipes had been used in the palace for over 50 years. As the Thompson family prepared to leave the courtyard, Wellington, Majesty, and Sterling remained at the fence, watching their special visitor with what appeared to be genuine fondness. The horses' continued attention created one final magical moment that would be forever etched in everyone's memory. Captain Morrison walked alongside Emma's wheelchair as they moved toward the palace exit, sharing information about the pen pal program she had promised to establish. "We'll send you pictures every week," she assured Emma, "and Wellington will be so excited to hear from you." The palace security team, who had monitored the day's events with professional discretion, found themselves genuinely moved by what they had witnessed. The head of security, Colonel James Whitmore, made a point of personally thanking the Thompson family for bringing such joy to the palace community. Dr. Thompson had been taking notes throughout the day, documenting Emma's responses and behaviors for her medical team. He was eager to discuss the potential benefits of equine therapy with her doctors and therapists, feeling optimistic about new treatment possibilities. As they reached the palace gates, Emma turned back one final time to wave at her new friends. Wellington raised his head and whinnied softly, as if responding to her farewell. The moment was so perfectly timed that several onlookers gasped with amazement. The impact of Emma's visit extended far beyond that single day. Within a week, the palace had received hundreds of letters and emails from people who had heard about the encounter, through social media and news reports. The story had captured hearts around the world, inspiring others to share their own experiences with the healing power of human-animal connections. Sergeant Mitchell found himself changed by the experience. He began volunteering at a local therapeutic riding center during his off-duty hours, sharing his expertise with children who had special needs. Wellington seemed to approve of this new activity, showing the same gentle patience with other children that he had demonstrated with Emma. The therapeutic riding programs that George Hartwell had recommended proved to be life-changing for Emma. Within months of her palace visit, she was participating in weekly riding sessions that improved her physical strength, coordination, and confidence. Her progress exceeded everyone's expectations. Captain Morrison kept her promise about the Pen Pal program, sending Emma weekly updates about Wellington's activities. Emma's letters back to the palace, dictated to her parents and filled with drawings and photos from her riding lessons, brought joy to the entire household cavalry unit. The rose bush from Mrs. Murphy's garden flourished in the Thompson family's backyard, becoming the centerpiece of a special garden that Emma tended with dedication. She talked to the roses daily, sharing stories about her riding lessons and her dreams of visiting Wellington again. 6 months after her initial visit, Emma received an unprecedented invitation to return to the palace for a formal ceremony, recognizing her as the youngest person ever granted honorary status by the household cavalry. The ceremony was attended by senior palace officials and covered by national media, inspiring countless families dealing with similar challenges. During her return visit, Emma demonstrated remarkable improvement in her physical abilities and communication skills. Her riding instructor accompanied the family, explaining to the palace staff how equine therapy had enhanced Emma's quality of life in ways that traditional medical treatments had not achieved. Wellington remembered Emma immediately, approaching the fence with obvious excitement when he saw her familiar wheelchair. The reunion was emotional for everyone present, with many staff members wiping away tears as they witnessed the obvious affection between the girl and the horse. The story of Emma's palace visit became part of palace folklore, shared with new guards and staff members as an example of how small acts of kindness could create extraordinary moments. Lieutenant Colonel Pemberton incorporated the story into training programs, emphasizing how military discipline could coexist with compassion and humanity. Mrs. Sarah Wellington, the tour guide, developed a special program for visitors with disabilities, ensuring that other families could experience the same welcome and accommodation that had made Emma's visit so successful. The program became a model for cultural institutions worldwide. A year later, Emma had progressed so significantly in her riding program that she was able to participate in a special exhibition at a local horse show. Sergeant Mitchell and Wellington attended as honored guests, with Wellington wearing ceremonial tack that sparkled in the arena lights. Emma's story inspired the creation of a charitable foundation dedicated to providing equine therapy opportunities for children with special needs. The foundation, supported by donations from around the world, helped hundreds of families access therapeutic riding programs that might otherwise have been financially impossible. The palace photographers' images from Emma's visit were eventually displayed in a special exhibition highlighting the human side of royal institutions. The photographs captured not just the interaction between a little girl and some horses, but the broader community of caring individuals who had come together to create. Medic Dr. Thompson often reflected on how a simple family vacation had transformed into something that changed their lives forever. Emma's confidence and abilities continued to improve, and her story became a source of hope for other families navigating similar challenges. The plush Wellington that Emma received during her visit remained her constant companion, accompanying her to medical appointments, riding lessons, and even sleeping beside her each night. The toy served as a tangible reminder that she had friends at the palace who cared about her welfare. Emma's influence on the palace community extended beyond her initial visit. Staff members reported feeling more connected to their work's deeper purpose, understanding how their roles contributed to creating meaningful experiences for the people they served. The three horses, Wellington, Majesty, and Sterling, seemed to retain some memory of their special visitor. Guards reported that the horses showed particular gentleness with subsequent child visitors, as if Emma had taught them something valuable about interacting with young people. Emma's grandmother, who had inspired the original palace visit with her stories, lived to see her granddaughter's remarkable progress and the international attention her story received. She often said that reality had far exceeded any fairy tale she could have imagined. The simple act of kindness shown by the royal guards and their horses had created ripple effects that continued to spread, touching lives and inspiring compassion in ways that none of the participants could have predicted. Emma's visit proved that sometimes the most profound impacts come from unexpected moments of human connection and understanding.